The Silph Arena is having their first themed PvP tournament called the Boulder Cup. The Boulder Cup uses the Great League format, but with one caveat. Players are restricted to using rock, ground, fighting, and steel type Pokemon, which makes for a more interesting meta. If you're interested in learning some more information about the Boulder Cup, feel free to check out the silph.gg/Boulder Cup. It'll tell you how you can find a local league, or maybe you could start a local league of your own. This is not an official kind of tournament through Pokemon Go itself. It's a local thing. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, we'll definitely check out this website here, maybe get you set up. As such, I do understand that not everybody is going to be able to participate in the Boulder Cup. I don't think I'm really going to have time to participate in the Boulder Cup myself, but players might be curious which Pokemon would be good in such a limited, unique kind of format. And for those that are participating in the Silph League Arena, well, then this information definitely is helpful to them. And as always, I do have an article up on Game Press on the Boulder Cup meta, link in the description to that article. It'll cover some topics in more detail than I'll be going over here, because if this video goes over 20 minutes, people will lose their minds. So definitely check this out. So here we have the Boulder Cup simplified. The best picks and how they function at a basic level in the Boulder Cup. So at a base, you might be wondering, Ryan Swag, what are the best options in the Boulder Cup in this limited league? And I definitely have to say it is the fighting and ground type Pokemon, especially the ones that use Counter and Mud Shot. Reason being is Counter, as I described in my Great League analysis, link in the description to that, is disproportionately more powerful than other fast moves in PvP. Just for the damage it does, it gains more energy, or for the energy it gains, it does more damage compared to other fast moves. Then you have the Mud Shot users on the ground type side of the force, and Mud Shot is one of the fastest energy gaining moves in PvP as well, so these Pokemon are already at a pretty big advantage. Another thing that really helps them out in this meta is they don't have Altaria or the grass types to worry about, so that really helps make them stand out even more in this restricted kind of format. So who are the best fighting and ground type Pokemon? Well, let me go over them a little bit with you. So first off, we have Medicham. And Medicham is just one of those Pokemon that's ergonomically designed for the Great League. It's got that low CP cap, it's got really good bulk, it's got really good moves. So Medicham definitely swag in here. What makes Medicham even better in this league is that, well, other fighting type Pokemon are dominant too. Medicham has the Psychic subtyping, which means that Medicham will resist their fighting type attacks. So if I'm fighting you and you're fighting me, and we're on an even playing field, but I take less damage from your attacks, well, then I'm going to win. And that's what Medicham mostly has going on here. So definitely every advantage in this league given to the Medicham. Very powerful Pokemon. My recommended moveset is Counter with Dynamic Punch and Ice Punch. You could forego Counter for Psycho Cut, which has faster energy gains than Counter does. Or you could also use Psychic to blast fighting type Pokemon to oblivion. But I personally feel that the Dynamic Punch and the Ice Punch are a bit more useful. So it's up to you to decide which moves you want on your Medicham. Those are my recommendations. So we got the best Counter user down. Who are the best Mud Shot users? And I'd have to say the best Mud Shot user is tied between Marshtomp and Whiscash. So the main thing that they got going on is Mud Shot with Mud Bomb. Mud Bomb is a very low energy cost charge move, and Mud Shot is the highest energy gaining move in the game. Well, tied with two other ones, but you get it. So you're doing these rapid Mud Bombs, and because you're doing these rapid Mud Bombs and there isn't a whole lot of stuff in this league to resist you, well, then you're very often doing more charge moves than your opponent is, which means you're going to wear them out faster than they can wear you out. Or you could wear their shields out faster than they'd wear your shields out. At any rate, these Pokemon will have the charge move advantage over many of their opponents, making them very powerful. The main difference between these two Pokemon lies in their second charge move. Whiscash has Blizzard. So Blizzard, a little bit steep in the energy cost, but it would completely obliterate a Breloom, which is the natural Predator Disease Pokemon, and would also, help seal the fate of Flygon and Gliscor and Gligar. So powerful on the Blizzard there. A good thing about Marshtomp, though, is that it has Surf, which is also a low energy cost charge move. It's a water type charge move, so you're able to get the advantage on the Gliscor and the Gligar yet. And Marshtomp could consistently take out the Skarmory, who I'll get into in a bit. with the Surf damage being a neutral hit that it gets off sooner than Skarmory can get off its neutral hits. So both Pokemon are very well worth considering for your Boulder Cup team. I'd definitely say Marshtomp is a little bit better because it does have that advantage over the Skarmory. So if these two Pokemon are really good, well, who are their natural predator? Well, that is the Breloom. And Breloom is also a quite potent Pokemon in the Boulder Cup in general. Yeah, so Breloom, sub-grass type Pokemon, has the Seed Bomb, so with Counter and Seed Bomb, can very quickly seal the fate of water type Pokemon, especially water ground type Pokemon like Marshtomp and Whiscash here. The biggest flaw to Breloom though is that it's like super weak to flying type damage. Grass and Fighting type are both weak to flying. Skarmory here would be able to defeat the Breloom before even getting off a Sky attack, just through the Air Slash damage. So definitely a risk to running Breloom in your team, but the ability to just shut down these powerful ground type Pokemon cannot be understated. So yeah, Breloom definitely looking hot in the Boulder Cup. Then finally, we have our most dynamic fighting type Pokemon in the Boulder Cup meta, and that is Hitmonchan. Now in general, in this meta and in the overall Great League itself, Metacham is a little bit too frail to see too many advantages. But because of how limited this meta is, Metacham's advantages definitely cannot be ignored. Am I calling it Metachan? Wow, Hitmonchan. So yeah, Hitmonchan's advantages cannot be ignored. It's got all 3 elemental punches and counter. So it's got the counter damage, which is one of the best fast moves in the game, and it has all 3 elemental punches, which are all great in PvP. So if you use the Ice Punch, that's going to help you out against the Gliscor, the Gligar, the Flygon, and the Breloom. If you're using the Fire Punch, well, that's going to help you against various Steel type Pokemon, and the Breloom, and the Skarmory. And if you're using Thunder Punch, also helps you out against Skarmory, helps you take on the Poliwrath. And if you want to just keep up with the fighting type damage, you also have Brick Break, which is a low energy cost fast move, and then you have Close Combat, which is a higher energy cost charge move, but does more straight damage. In a sense, it's kind of like Mewtwo is in the Master League. It can carry any of these types of attacks. Which ones does it have? What are you going to switch into the Hitmonchan? Are you going to switch in Skarmory? Well, get the Fire Punch. You're going to switch in Gliscor or Gligar? You get the Ice Punch. You're going to switch in anything else? Well, you're going to get punched. At the end of the day, one thing is certain, and that is Hitmonchan is going to punch you. How is it going to punch you? Well, you're not going to know until you know. And when the time comes that you learn, it might be too late. Or Hitmonchan might be a little bit too frail and might get knocked out right away. So, yeah. Definitely a risky Pokemon, but the rewards are there. Now, there are other ground type and fighting type Pokemon you might be thinking about, like Ryan Swag. What about Toxicroak? Toxicroak resists fighting type damage. Yes, that is similar to Metacham in a way, and Toxicroak does perform similarly to Metacham. Big problem with Toxicroak, though, is that it's vulnerable to the Mud Shot and Mud Bomb users because it's sub-poison type, weak to ground type damage. And you may also be considering the Quagsire. It does Mud Shot. It's like the ground water type Pokemon. Why isn't Quagsire good? Well, I feel Quagsire has a little bit too steep of an energy cost on all of its attacks, where these guys can, finesse battles with their low energy cost attacks. So Quagsire good, but not as fast as these guys. I think overall these guys are a little bit better. Alright, so we've got these all-powerful fighting and ground type Pokemon. Well, who can stand up to their power? And there's one Pokemon that does it exceptionally well, and that is Skarmory. That's right, Altaria is gone, so the cats will play, right? But then Skarmory shows up and says, guess what, fools? I'm also a flying type, and I'm a steel type. What are you going to do now? Steel type is weak to fighting and ground, but flying type has an immunity tier resistance to ground, which means, 2 minus 1 is 1. So it has a single resistance to ground type attacks, very useful. And then as far as fighting type damage goes, it is neutral damage because steel type is weak, flying type has a single resistance to fighting type damage, but Skarmory is using exclusively flying type attacks. It's using the Air Slash with the Sky attack, both very powerful moves and very capable of taking these guys out. So overall, Skarmory has the natural advantage over these Pokemon here. So in a game of rock, paper, scissors, you can think of the ground and fighting type Pokemon as being like the rock. Skarmory comes in to cover them. It's the paper. So very good Pokemon to use in this league. How are you going to beat the Skarmory? Well, you can use the dedicated Skarmory counters, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Or you could try to soft counter it down using Hitmonchan with Fire Punch or Thunder Punch. Or you could use Marshtomp and try to wear it down with the Rapid Surf damage. Outside of that, the deck is kind of stacked against these guys when it comes to Skarmory. So if these guys, the rocks, have problems against the paper, well, where's the scissors? Well, the scissors are right here, right? It's all these steel type Pokemon for the most part. So these Pokemon do an excellent job at beating Skarmory, and they also do an excellent job of losing to all the fighting and ground type Pokemon. So they might be a little bit too risky for your team. Maybe you think you can get on by with just your Marshtomp and your Hitmonchan, but if you do want that solid assurance against the Skarmory, well then take a look at the scissors of the Boulder League meta. First off, I'd like to highlight the Magcargo. Magcargo actually stands out as being one of the few fire type attack using Pokemon that can actually make it in this league. Now it does have Heat Wave and I believe Overheat. Those two charge moves are traps. Just like Heatran in the Master and Ultra League, the fire type charge moves are a little bit too steep. And if you want this Pokemon to perform well, get around in the meta, you're definitely going to stick with the lower energy cost charge move, which in this case is Stone Edge. Also quite like Heatran. Interesting. So not only can Magcargo take down the Skarmory, but Magcargo does inherently have an advantage over the other steel types that are hanging around for the purpose of taking down Skarmory, which makes it definitely a powerful Pokemon to consider adding to your team. Big problem with it though is that it's doubly weak to ground type attacks and water type attacks, so it goes down pretty quickly to almost any ground type Pokemon featured in this league, and then it's also weak to fighting type damage. So yeah, sorry Magcargo. So definitely has some advantages here, definitely has some disadvantages. Do you want to include it on your team? That's up to you. Then next up we have Melmetal, Magneton, and Magnemite. And I'm going to lump these three Pokemon together because they basically function off the same idea, using Thundershock or Spark with Thunderbolt or Discharge. Thunderbolt is better than Discharge, so if you invest in a Magnemite, make sure you go with Thunderbolt. So these Pokemon, they got their Thunderbolt spam, and these three Pokemon resist flying type damage and steel type damage. So what more do you want from them? So you might be thinking, why would you want to use these Pokemon that could potentially lose to Magcargo instead of Magcargo? Well, they do have the fast Thunderbolt activation. So after their job is done, they take out the Skarmory. Well, then they can lay in some extra hits on the fighting or, water ground type Pokemon that come in against them. So you get that extra lick in, where Magcargo doesn't really have the opportunity to lay in an extra hit. It just kind of rolls over and dies. So good reasons to use these Pokemon here. Cool advantage sported by the Melmetal too is that it has access to Rock Slide. So with Rock Slide, if Gligar or Gliscor were to come in and try to rain on its day, well, it could get the advantage in the matchup and beat them through Rock Slide damage. So good reason to think on the Melmetal here. Another good Pokemon in this arena would be Steelix. Steelix functions kind of like Magcargo does, where it can beat Skarmory, and then it can also beat other Skarmory beating Pokemon. It's got Dragon Tail and Crunch, so its faster charge move activation could even allow it to gain the advantage over Magcargo itself, even though Magcargo does have the super effective fire type Ember attack. So yeah, very unique Pokemon, definitely worth considering for your team. Beats Skarmory counters, and could possibly even beat Magcargo. Of course, big problem it has, that Magcargo has, is that it kind of rolls over to all the other powerful Pokemon in the Boulder Cup meta. So Steelix, there are risks, there are rewards. Then finally, off to the side, we have Gligar and Gliscor. And these two Pokemon aren't particularly good, but they're definitely not bad either. The reason why they're off to the side is that they don't function cleanly in this, rock, paper, scissors type of format. Gligar and Gliscor have the opportunity to beat the fighting and ground type Pokemon, but if they get hit by water or ice type attacks, well then they're going to go down. Gliscor has Earthquake, and Gligar can do some pretty good work with Night Slash as well onto the steel type Pokemon and the Magcargo over here. But similarly, these Pokemon, aside from Magcargo, do have the opportunity to hurt these guys back. And then on top of it, Skarmory beats them. They can't beat Skarmory. So yeah, risky options in the Gligar and the Gliscor. Definitely worth considering for your team though, because they do take some solid wins. They just also take some solid losses. So that's all I have on the Boulder Cup meta. This is the Boulder Cup Simplified. If you want some more details on these Pokemon, definitely check out my article on GamePress, link in the description. And if you want some information on how to participate in the Boulder Cup, well then check out, the silph.gg/boulder-cup, also linked in the description. If you have any questions on these picks, why I picked one Pokemon, not another, or maybe you got some recommendations, well, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll check it out. If you enjoyed this content and you want to see more like it, well then make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. Swag.